Stefani Smith has fished for crabs in the Bering Sea.
A lot of Bering Sea boats are actually based in Seattle.
They outfit and repair them here too.
Yeah, many are built here.
Fishing in the Bering Sea is one of the most dangerous things you could ever do.
That is about as dangerous as you can get.
You can get, right. You mean she worked on the deck with all those macho males?
How many women do that?
Not many.
Wow, it's cold up there.
I don't know how she could manage to live with all those men.
She obviously held her own. I wonder what they thought.
She's also a photographer.
You wouldn't believe the video she's taken.
It's life that not many people experience. It's the last wild frontier. It's the last harvest from the wild. And, you know, when you survive to fight another day, there's really something life-affirming about that. There's nothing like getting through a storm, a really hard storm, and, you know, sort of looking around you to see who's still standing and knowing what you've been through. Yeah, the fishermen are hard-living people. I mean, they really want to reckon with you know, something greater, larger than life. And there is a lot of passion in the blood there. There's a lot of deep character, but and wantonness and recklessness and unsavory. I mean, the tempers fly, and maybe it seems crass and rough to an outside person, but Seattle-based fishermen and Alaska fishermen have a lot of exposure, you know, to Seattle and the culture, and really pretty dynamic bunch. Unnecessary tragedy is horrible, and there's a fair amount of it, but I think that by and large, you know, the industry is, you know, sort of the nature of the beast. It is what it is, and it's risky by nature. Now that the pleasure boats are moving into Fisherman's Terminal, they're trying to curb our behavior. People are lobbying for signatures to get rid of drinking and different things going on about the harbor that, you know, I think has been sort of part of our not so savory behavior or traditions, perhaps. They want to see things more restrained. I'm surprised to see how many pleasure boats there are around here. I hadn't realized it was filling up so fast. The terminal has definitely changed. This is my motley collection of kind of boats I work on in the Bering Sea. There's a few draggers in here. And when these guys are displaced by the pleasure boats, we're really going to be in trouble. Seattle has been a portal to the Alaska fisheries for a long time. A lot of the pioneers up there were fishing off the coast here, and then also there's the Norwegian communities and Scandinavians and Yugoslavians, and there's a lot of ethnic groups that have developed the fisheries and all the different fisheries up there. So they tend to be based out of here. You know, it's an end of an era. I mean, we're seeing it happen. It's coming about. Seattle is no longer so much a fishing town. We really feel it. You know, that there's a lot of strangers in this town now to us that you know, are thinking about other things, and they have no concept of how deep the roots are for fishermen in Seattle, and you know, all the businesses and history and, you know, things that have been passed down, and the stories and recollections of these locations like Fisherman's Terminal and some of the shipyards that are being turned over to condos and urban development. It's very unsettling when you really felt that you were once the proud heir of a dynasty, really. I mean, I think there's a lot of pride in the fleet and our community, and our heritage and tradition. Seattle's a cultural hub for the fisheries. You know, there's a lot of expertise and skill and knowledge, and then the net builders, the gear builders, they base out of here. So there's just a pool of experience that resides in Seattle.
So did you guys get into sharks?
Do you guys get a lot of sharks?
When I was off the boat, I came back and there was tears in this size web.
Yeah.
And they said they got into all these sharks and it was really screwing things up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when we had that big storm rolling through there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we were out on deck trying to fix it.
Oh, that one that like caved everything in Dutch Harbor.
Yeah.
I left Sacramento when I was a teenager, and I had fallen in love with this place my father had moved to in Oregon, Astoria. In my 9th grade, I quit school, and I felt that what I really needed to do was work. I started just working in the cannery and did that for a few years, and then as I began to lose interest in the toil and monotony of processing fish, I tried to get on a fishing boat when in Astoria, and I would ask the fishermen that would bring their gear to the shop, you know, if there was any chance of getting on a boat, and they would always tell me my wife would never let me hire a woman, and, you know, we just don't hire women, and so it was very discouraging. But I found out about an old guy from the Gulf of Texas that had been building shrimp nets for the local fishermen for a number of years, and approached him, and he offered me a job and became my mentor. And I had a real passion for it. Having a real mentor to teach me my net skills was just a very strong foundation, and I got a lot of respect for what I could figure out about a net. I had a lot of confidence in net construction and repair because I had the basic formula for dissecting the problem and putting it back together under any circumstances. I really wanted to try it and find out what it was about, and I realized, well, I've been a processor, so if nothing else, I can get on as a processor, so that's the avenue I took.
Big fish!
And really, I would have been satisfied just to see the gear work. You know, I'd been building it, and I could never see it in the water deployed, so as it turned out, the boat that I ended up on happened to have some Irish deckhands, and I knew them from the shop, and so they, you know, say, "Oh, come on out," you know, and I'd be standing on the sidelines, you know, just watching them fix the gear. It's just driving me crazy, you know, because this is like in my blood, and so they let me come and work on the gear with them, and then somebody told the skipper, you know, I was running the boat, that I was actually a web person, and I'd been coming out on the deck, and so he called me up, and I got this call to go see the captain, and I thought, oh no, I've got to be in trouble, you know, for going out on deck, and he just had a talk with me and told me, well, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you're on the deck. That was great. I just fell in love with it. It was like a big Yahoo moment, you know, where you kind of realize, like, oh, you know, I don't have to live my life in these other ways, you know, that you sort of settle for. On the boats, it's a very coveted skill. There's not a lot of people that really achieve proficiency at it, so the skill I have is very sought after. If you don't know what you're doing, it's very easy on a boat to cross lines and completely tangle the opening of the net, and eventually over time, if you're not repairing it properly, it just deteriorates, you know. And then the other asset to the, you know, really knowing how to do it is speed. You know, time is of the essence, and when fishing's very good, you have to get the gear back out there. A lot of crab boats were converting over to pioneer this trawl fishery for midwater. And so the pollock fishery came into being with these large midwater nets, large mesh nets, and transferring the bag to a foreign mothership. And I think that's why I had probably such easy entree into the fleet, because it was a time of expansion. These boats come back to Seattle because they're based here. A lot of them, it's also the facilities and the resources here for doing, machine shop work and welders and electricians and people who do all the support technologies for the fisheries. A lot of the owners live here, the companies and management's out of here, suppliers are here, so everything happens right here. Oh, you're painting as you go.
Nah, I just missed some.
Keeping it so pretty. Are you just focusing on the black paint for now?
Whatever you think's cool.
Okay. We're very conscientious about, the rituals of cleaning. I mean, even when the boat is, all the paint is turned to rust. Yeah, I had a few years that were very difficult. I didn't even realize how lonely I was. I realized one day I kind of did the math, and I realized I hadn't seen another female in 90 days. This is my home away from home for 3 months at a whack. I do get kind of worn out sometimes because I'm always trying to, manage the personalities or be the peacemaker or, I don't know. I feel like I work overtime sometimes. And you got to cover each other. So, your life depends on each other. The strength of your crew and, the quality of your season. That's why the crew shares are really an important part of the makeup. We're all vested partners in the success of each season because we get a percentage of the stock, the catch. So we really, how well we do is contingent on how well we work together. You don't realize it, but you shut down, as a female. You just shut down so many parts of your character, personality when you can only deal with men. And I think a lot of what got me through and got me, enabled me to continue to work and get respect as an equal was because I kind of denied my female side. I kind of hid it as much as I could because I just wanted to do my job. I really loved the work and I didn't want any complication. I didn't want, any detractors from the fact that I could do this work and just wanted to do it sincerely. I don't mind. I don't mind the dirtiness. I kind of like the, messy work. There's something appealing about it. I really like the grease, and the mechanical kind of grease and grimes. I always liked that kind of stuff. In the 70s, I think the crabbers really got going. I got to know some of the crabbers, and then I eventually started going on crab boats and working the crab season here and there. I was out there stuffing bait jugs and, setting up the hanging bait and helping out and throwing the hook on occasion and go to the rail a little bit. And then I cooked, and then I'd take the wheel, at night and do wheel watches when everybody's sleeping. When I fished the crab fishing in the Bering Sea, the seasons were much shorter, but you go for a week, and you're working 20 hours a day, and so you're pretty much 20 on and 4 off, or sometimes you go 36 hours without a break. I knew I needed some kind of creative outlet, and I went back to school. I actually continued to fish through school as much as I could. I ended up finally in videography.
Oh, you're trying to figure out your camera too, huh?
And then in my final year, I decided you know, there was a subject that really compelled me, and that was the crab fisheries. I really enjoyed filming it. It was just beautiful to be able to be an observer for once, you know, and really, really be captivated by just the spectacle of it. Some of my favorite shots from fishing are just when the spray, you know, you're just sort of in a deluge. All the world is just sort of raining upon you, and you're fishing sometimes, and I got some wet lens shots, you know, where you're seeing through the blur of water on the lens, and I really love that. There's something very evocative about it. There's the spray flying off the waves, and you know, you're sort of swimming in it, and that really captures more of the feel in a kind of a romantic way. It doesn't feel that good when you're, it doesn't feel as good as it looks, you know, when you're in it. The Bering Sea that time of year is really brutal, and it's just constant storming weather. So you're dealing with waves and stability issues, and then the gear, you know, on the deck is oftentimes it's not tied down because you're quickly turning it over, so you don't have time to tie it down. So you're stacking it, you know, in rows. The pots are, well, yeah, I think it's like a 6-by is about 600 pounds. A 7-by is around 800 pounds. They go up to 9-bys. The real danger is not as much the pots as waves, shipping waves over the side and getting knocked overboard, or people getting tired and long hours of work, and you know, you got somebody running the hydraulics that hasn't slept in days, and you get a rhythm going, and if anything interrupts that, then I think it's easy for people to kind of lose track of what's happening, and your body's sort of on autopilot, and the guys get pitched overboard in the pot. Icing conditions, you know, boats go down when they've got a lot of gear stacked on board, and then they take on ice, and they're in heavy seas. And that's the hell of, you know, that time of year, is that you're not only are you trying to run the gear, and nobody wants to let up, nobody wants to back down, nobody wants to run less gear just because of the weather. Very secretive. They're all poker players. They like to bluff. They like to outfox each other. There's a lot of games, you know, ways to play deception and lure somebody away from the fish when you're on them, and you're watching the radar all the time, and you listen to the radio, and you're always creating a roadmap and a chart of who's doing what and where and what kind of person they are, just how much you trust them. The quota has now been allocated to the boats, and people know what they're going to be able to catch every year before the season even starts. And a lot of the justification of that was safety. I think it's helped, but it's still the fishery is still going to be pushed to the envelope. Everybody's going to push the envelope in the fisheries and try to get as much as they can in the shortest amount of time. So we're still fishing foul weather, and the hardest time of the year is still the most productive. really impressed me, the brutality of that work. And I then eventually met a guy that was starting up a small crab boat fishery. It was a small boat fishery out of Norton Sound, fishing the subspecies of the Bering Sea king crab. So he came to me and asked me if I wanted to come go fish Norton Sound with him, and he said, yeah, it's easy, it's small, it's small boats and small pots, and it's a daylight fishery. You know, I'm thinking, oh, 8 hours, 9 to 5 fishing, wouldn't that be great? Little did I realize at the time, it's daylight 24 hours a day that time of year, and we fished around the clock. We were fishing offshore with these herring skiffs that are really only meant to be within less than a mile from shore, and so they're not very watertight boats, and they're small, and yeah, they're just not built for going out offshore. And as the years went on, you know, the crab pattern changed, and they were further and further offshore, and we were running farther and farther to find them. And the weather just comes up so fast there that by the time you realize it's blowing, it's too late. You know, you can't get into harbor fast enough. We'd put out in Nome in the springtime and then have to travel across Norton Sound over to the other side. And yeah, one year the ice was still moving out of the area. The ice was there very late. And then we were traveling, you know, for, I don't know, it was a 110-mile transit. So, you know, we'd find leads and get in there and, you know, see what's going on. And it's very creepy. It's very spooky because you can get trapped. And I know guys, well, you know, Richard had gotten trapped there in years past where they were stuck for 2-3 days, putting antennas on the top of pike poles, you know, and trying to get it up high enough to call somebody to get an airplane to fly them out. It was fun. It was an adventure. It was very interesting to fish in a place that's not so industrialized. People are so friendly, and just everything moved at a different pace. I think most of the small boat fishermen out of there were native. Yeah, when you get into Dutch Harbor, there's so much adrenaline in everybody's system that there's a lot of wanting to get together and sort of tell lies and big stories, and there's a lot of drinking that goes on. It's very fun, you know. I like to go out and drink and see people. It's always interesting to see who you run into. But I don't tend to drink on a regular basis. I can't take the hangovers, you know. When I have to turn around and go out fishing, it takes me 3 days to recover. There's another fisherman out there who's a master knitter. And the first time I met him was at the bar in Adak, and I didn't know who he was, and he's kind of sizing me up, and he goes, yeah, I bet you're size 6. And I thought, who is this guy? I just want to slap him. Before I even realized, you know, he's sizing me up to make a sweater. But, geez, I thought it was like this really vulgar come on. And then one time he came over and he started writing down the recipe to make booties. Then he showed up, you know, he went back to his boat and came back, you know, with this duffel bag full of yarn, and then started setting me up with yarn and materials and everything I needed to make these booties. This last winter, we went through the worst season since, I think, 91 or so. We had heavy freezing sprays heading out to the grounds, and you're way out in the middle. You can't, you know, there's no shelter or anything. And the temperature plummeted, and we were making ice. For every inch of ice, you know, is so many tons of weight added to the boat, and it's definitely a stability issue. Plus, you can't see out of the wheelhouse. You know, we don't have heaters in that wheelhouse, and you know, so all the windows freeze over. You're sort of traveling blind. You know, you're fishing in cyberspace. You rely on the monitors and the radar and everything. We started the season with three crew. Before we even left the dock, 2 of them were injured. One of us, myself, that was actually able to bust up these sheets, big sheets of ice and move them, you know, throw them overboard. And we don't back down. I mean, we just keep fishing. Well, that was good because, you know, you get strong. You always want an excuse to get stronger. So. I've lived so many years as a poor person, you know, and being on my own at an early age and working in the cannery and not having, you know, marketable skills, that once I started making money fishing, it was incredible. It enabled me to help my friends and my family, you know, in ways I've been able to support people that I love, you know, not completely, but to really sort of help them through bad times, and that's been really important. I never wanted to get married. I don't know if it's, you know, part of it, you know, he spends so much time around men that you sort of have enough of all the maleness you can take, and I think maybe it's made me a little bit cynical in a way. But as I gotten older, I finally came to a place where I really recognized a yearning for companionship, and I was really lucky in the last couple years. I rekindled an old flame that with somebody that I'd met when I actually had crab fished on his boat. You know, we had a fondness for each other, but we were never involved, and we're always friends. You know, it's one of those encounters that you make. He got a hold of me a couple years ago, and we struck up a conversation that has evolved into a real love, and it's just great. So we're going to get married, and I feel very lucky to have found somebody who harkens so far back in my life that I share so much with. I never imagined that I would marry a fisherman, actually. But he's one of the best I know.